So welcome back to my channel. This is Dom and another one of my tours around the castles of the Marcher region between Wales and England using the book The Castles of the Marches by John Kinross as a guide. So today's castle is going to be the castle of Longtown, which is situated in the south of Herefordshire. Almost very close to the White Castle and that group of castles that I've previously looked at in other videos. If you're interested, check them out. So Longtown Castle is in a beautiful hamlet, as I say, in South Herefordshire, and it's sort of, I guess, modest appearance belies an amazing history, actually. So Longtown Castle had its origins that go back almost 2,000 years as a Roman fort. There was a Roman road there that ran right up along the border of Wales, and for long periods there was a 500-strong cohort of Roman infantry based there out of the Roman fort. They were used to fight against one of the local tribes who were resisting Roman rule. It was one of many forts that was built along the border area in the 1st century, each about a day's march from the next, building up a front line against the upstarts who were resisting rule. Originally had a square embankment of turf surrounded by a ditch and topped with the archetypal Roman wooden stockade. But about 1,000 years later, the ditch around the fort was widened and deepened, and spoil used to raise the Romans' turf embankment to a height of around 5 metres. That was probably around 1055, after a Welsh army had looted and burnt Herefordshire. The Anglo-Saxon army, led by Earl Harold Godwinson, yeah, that one, chased them back into Wales and made their camp there, waiting for an attack that never came. Of course, in 1066, when the Normans invaded, Godwinson, now the king, was killed at the Battle of Hastings, spoiler, and William Conqueror sent William Fitz-Osbert and Walter de Lacy to Herefordshire to defend the border with Wales. They were responsible for creating most of the castles along there, these 200-odd castles that are along the Marcher region that I'm actually trying to visit every single one of. As is typical of the period, they built a Norman motte and bailey castle, and it appeared they used a lot of the spoil and certainly the site of the Roman camp here at Longtown to build their new castle. So it appears that Walter originally started to build another castle just south of Longtown to counter the Welsh threat. But when inevitable conflict occurred, he abandoned that without completing it and took over the Longtown fort as a site for his new castle. And I guess that makes sense, using what was there already in terms of a Roman fort. Probably made life a lot easier and much quicker to build a new castle. An earth mound called a motte was raised over the northwest corner of the rampart and topped with a timber tower. From there, Walter de Lacy not only dominated the local Welsh people in the valley, but also defended them from raids coming from parts of Wales that were still independent. After William the Conqueror died in 1087, Walter's son, Roger de Lacy, twice conspired unsuccessfully against the new king, William Rufus. He was exiled to Normandy, and his castles, including Longtown, were confiscated. During the Civil War, or what's known as the Anarchy, in 1135 to 53, Roger de Lacy's son Gilbert fought to regain his father's property, and around 1148 he finally recovered his inheritance. It's believed that actually it was probably Gilbert who replaced the old wooden castle at Longtown with a stone castle, which, as we see today, and it's probably one of the earliest round keeps in Britain, and certainly the earliest in Wales and the Welsh marches. In order to pay for the castle, de Lacy laid out a new town or borough stretching out along the ridge to the north and south of the castle, which became known as the Long Town of Ewes Lacy. The de Lacy family were immensely wealthy and became even wealthier when Hugh, Gilbert's son, went with an English army led by Henry II to Ireland in 1171. The invaders conquered much of Ireland, and for a time Hugh became the viceroy there. Eventually, however, the de Lacys overreached themselves, and in 1210 King John sent an army to expel them. The last de Lacy, called Walter, like the first member of the dynasty, fell on hard times when he died in 1241, blind and seriously in debt. His only son having already died, the de Lacy estates were divided between his two granddaughters. Longtown lost its importance as a regional centre and was further diminished by the Black Death of 1348-1349, along with many other towns and villages, and quite soon afterwards the castle became the picturesque ruin we see today. Longtown Castle was garrisoned for the last time in 1403 on the orders of Henry IV, when Owen Glendower was leading a Welsh rebellion. Today, Longtown, in terms of its the village itself, is a very sleepy, tiny hamlet of very small number of houses, but still is stretched out quite a long way along the road, which sort of gives you the an idea of what Longtown would have, in its glory, would have looked like. The castle itself, when we were there, unfortunately, the tower was undergoing restoration. Apparently, some earlier restoration had used unsuitable concrete, which was actually damaging the stone. So they were replacing it, which meant you couldn't actually get up to the tower itself, which was a shame. Would have liked to have done that, but you can still see the castle and village green surrounded by a massive rampart, which was probably the original Roman fort, strengthened in 1055. Little now survives of the stone walls that defended the inner and outer baileys of the castle itself. But what remains show that they were 2 meters thick, with a walkway about 3 meters high, presumably fronted with crinoline parapets. The original main gatehouse of the castle is now ruined and blocked, which was just to the left of the present entrance. This opened into an outer bailey, which would probably have had barracks for soldiers and stables for the horses. The small gatehouse that protects the entrance to the inner bailey still has slots for the portcullis, and the entrance is surprisingly narrow, just large enough for a mounted man, which suggests that the inner bailey was reserved for important people like knights and their family. The keep itself, as I say, we couldn't get up there, but it by all accounts, it would have held the personal apartments of the lord and his family, and was capped by a wall walk with battlements and 3 turrets from which outlets could watch what was happening around the castle. The keep was obviously the last refuge for the garrison if the castle ever came under attack, and the outer breaches were outer defensive breaches. The huge open gash in the sides of the keep contains the remains of a spiral staircase, originally within one of the keep's original projecting turrets, which would have connected the circular rooms on each of the 3 floors. One of the 2 surviving turrets contains a chimney and other garderobe toilet chambers. The windowless ground floor was probably the storeroom and occasional prison. The next level was the main reception room with a fireplace and 3 windows, and the upper story was a bedroom with ensuite toilet projecting out from the wall. It's a beautiful place, well worth a visit. As I say, at the moment you can't get up to the tower, but even so, the trip to the village of Longtown itself is beautiful. There's just outside the entrance to the castle, which is free to get in, is a very old schoolhouse, which, if you're interested in other periods of history, it's fascinating because it still has on the walls notice of who were the original who originally made the donations to set up the schools, which I always think is fascinating to see. And you don't see that very often on English schools anymore. So yeah, well worth a visit if you're in that part of South Herefordshire or anywhere around the border regions between Wales and England. So there you go, another castle ticked off the list. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a like and share and subscribe and do all that stuff. Hit the follow button if you're interested. I will continue my journey through the nearly 200 or more than 200 castles of the Marcher region. And if you're interested, look back at some of the ones I've previously recorded. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening. This is Dom signing out.